This is CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast with Business Solutions MVPs Joel Lindstrom, George Sabinski, and Sean Tabor. This week we don't have a commercial because we're joined by Daniel Kai from our sponsor Kingswaysoft to tell us all about what's new in the autumn release of Kingswaysoft. We also get into some topics around Dynamics 365, some recent news, and other things you need to know. Thanks to Kingswaysoft for sponsoring CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast.
We have Daniel Kai with us from Kingswaysoft. Hey, Daniel.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Sean.
Hey, welcome, Daniel.
Thank you.
Are you on that post CRM UG Summit hangover like we are?
Yeah, very much so.
Well, Daniel, I invited because I've seen information about the new version of Kingswaysoft, and there's some exciting things I've been itching to talk about. And Daniel said, "Hold on till I get it done," and now he's got it done. So I said, "Daniel, you have to come on and talk about it." So, Kingswaysoft version 9, is that right?
That's correct, exactly.
And when did you start Kingswaysoft? Remind me.
Roughly about October of 2011. That's the first day I get out of contract job and start to write the first line of code.
Nice. So, what is the new and exciting things in Kingswaysoft version 9?
So the main feature in this release in version 9 is we added multi-threaded writing support for the destination component.
Okay.
So basically, the feature enables you to write two CRM in parallel instead of in single threaded fashion.
Okay. So how does that differ than the old way of using the balanced data distributor?
That's a significant performance improvement. Database. I used to be a big fan of balanced data distributor, which is also called BDD in SAS terminology, and it works fairly well. But it comes to a point when it's painful to maintain more than one destination component.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, you got integration that goes to multiple components. It's hard to get the BDD to point to different connections. Is that the problem?
The main problem is if you ever need to make a single change to your mapping, you have to go through all the destination component to change the map in every place. With the new release of multi-threaded writing, so you just need to deal with one single destination component. And another benefit is actually there is a hidden feature in SAS, so you could really only use up to 5 concurrent destination component because there is a hidden buffer limitation that you can run at a maximum 5 active buffers with SAS pipeline. So if you want to go more than 5 threads, you're going to have to split it across different data flow tasks, which is going to be another headache to deal with.
Okay.
And with our new release, so you could easily say, I wanted to do 30 thread or 40 thread, even you could go up to 100 thread, just as using a single component. Okay.
So if somebody has a current integration that has BDD and it's working, is it worth it to re-engineer it to use multi-threading? How much performance benefit versus BDD will you get from multi-threading?
Great question. I would suggest to switch to the new threading model because it's much easier to maintain, and also it can scale much better in a much better way. So basically, you just need to say, I want a 20 thread. We spin up a 20 thread for you, and it's much better control compared to BDD. And the changing effort is very minimal. You just remove the BDD component, and then all the rest of the destination component, and then just use one single destination component to facilitate the writing.
Okay. So what else do we have in there? What about version 9 support? Anything new on there?
Yeah, we did a few other things. We for CRM perspective, we added a support for new action called a send action.
Okay.
And send action basically allows you to send email in CRM. Because when you create an email record, an email doesn't get sent until you you perform a send action to trigger the send email operation.
Okay.
And one other feature is we added support for delete action for audit entity.
Oh, okay. So you can
if you ever want
your audit.
Exactly.
Okay.
Interesting.
So what's the use case? What was the client feedback that drove that feature? Is it people got irritated by all the noise in the audit table?
Yeah, that's exactly the question. The feature was designed for, because the feature we always listen to our client feedback. This actually was raised by a client. They want to have a way to delete the auditor entities, entity records. So we added the feature just because of that feedback. We believe this is a feature that would benefit to other clients. So which is the reason for us to get into this feature quickly. The usage scenario is if you ever want to delete auditor, it's not easy to do that, and given the feature in our component, you can just easily set up the component to do the delete for the past auditor history.
I think of a time when that would have come in really handy, and that was when I was our Hitachi Solution CRM administrator, and I cloned our production environment, all 100 gigs of it, and auditing was turned on, and it created a 100 gigabyte audit table, and I could not delete those audit records until 90 days later, because it keeps 90 days of audits, and you can only delete the previous. So yeah, I can see where that would help people who are running low of space online and have big audit tables, and they want to pare that down so they don't have to buy more storage.
And I think the key phrase in that comment you just made is when you used to be CRM administrator.
Shut up, Sean.
Daniel, something interesting about the new release, sorry, frog in my throat, is the documentation generation. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you're able to generate that metadata?
Oh, yes, that's a good question. That's actually in our version 9.1 release. We did that feature. It's also based on the feedback we hear from our client. The primary struggle with some of our ETL developer, they are not really a documentation writer in any sense. So people don't always like writing documentation. So we offer the feature. You just click a single button, and then it will launch a window to let you select what aspect you want to export right to your documentation, and we let you control to a certain granularity level. So you have access to the information to the component, so you can put that in a nice written document, a Word document.
So now, if you were going with CRM, I mean, there's tools in the XRM toolbox that do that are quite easy. I could see that this would be very useful for documenting other sources that you might be integrating with.
Yeah, this feature is really designed for the ETL developer. It is really for someone who uses our source component or destination component. We basically, what the idea is, when you export a documentation, we provide you the list of the fields that are available in the component and what has that been mapped to. So you get the access. You have the information about what is the input, what is the output to the CRM. That for CRM as a destination. When you use a CRM source, we let you know that which field you have picked to be used in your pipeline, which you have not. So that gives you that kind of granularity control.
So essentially, during a project process, and you're doing data mapping exercises manually. Obviously, you're going through and you're You're mapping what you think should be from your source to your destination before you're actually running the migration or even a test. What this could really do is generate that final document to have a level set against what you expected versus what the final actually was, and really update your documentation accordingly. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that could be the purpose. You could do the reverse engineer or reverse documentation of your ETL process.
Right, because there could be things in the source, like let's say for example you're moving from Salesforce to Dynamics. There could be things in the Salesforce database or in the connector that we may not understand or realize. Maybe it's a hidden value, maybe it's a calculated value, what have you. This will surface that information and give you a little more clarity and detail to what you might not have had before. So I think that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a major feature. It's in the version 9. It's a operation support. It's a Dynamics 365 version operation support. That's a new, brand new connection and brand new. It's not necessarily a brand new connection, but in a certain way, it's a brand new service endpoint that we are connecting to. We did a number of new components and new features. A lot of the thing I like to highlight is we did the major enhancement to the SS Party Pack. The SS Party Pack is a different product, but it offers many specific features to help ETL developer to be more productive and in getting more things done in much quicker fashion. We enhanced the number of features, including diff detector, duplicate detector. Those can be used in CRM practice to scan duplicates or compare differences between two source systems. And we also did a number of other components, as you mentioned, like Eloqua is one of the components that we released as a beta version. We are still going through some final QA process to finalize the product. But we we also shipped our first support for QuickBooks on-premise. We used to have QuickBooks online support, but it has been a fairly long time since we shipped the new QuickBooks desktop support.
Okay. Do you have a lot of QuickBooks desktop users still?
We hear that often, but we don't have actually statistic numbers. But it's still a fairly popular usage of software in many small or medium-sized company.
And one of the new connectors that was a big help to us was the new ADO.NET connector. Because we were using it, and Daniel, you helped me out on this, but we were using it with the SQL, Azure SQL from the export service for Dynamics 365, and having jobs that would hit that and then move records somewhere else. And what we found was that it was a large job, so it would be more than 30 minutes between when it hit the database, and Azure closes connections that are idle for more than 30 minutes. And so we had our big job that kept getting closed, but your ADO.NET connector helped keep the connection open or reconnect to it, so now the jobs are completing successfully.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. That's a part. Our ADO.NET connections and the source and destiny are part of our SS Party Pack solution. We have the vision of trying to make the life easier for the ETL developers. So for that reason that we look into this particular situation when connecting to SQL Azure instance due to the fact that there has a limitation about the time span that you can connect to a SQL Server instance, SQL Azure instance, and it's the out of box SS ADO.NET connection would just simply timeout and then throw exception when you try to read it again during the process.
Yeah, that was helpful, and just a good reminder of SQL and things like that are moving to Azure. Having a good ETL tool like Kingswaysoft is still a great thing. So Microsoft announced that Parature is reaching its end of life in May 2018, next year. And so last week or the week before, they released a migration toolkit that's just kind of a tool that to move everything to Dynamics 365 from Parature, your companies, your KB articles, your cases. But one thing is we're talking to several companies that have Parature. There's not a ton of them, but there are some of them. And one thing we're pointing out is, the standard tool is good, but you still have your Parature, your Parature connector available, and that's a good thing to extend, or if you need to enhance the standard migration tool, Kingswaysoft is a good fit for that too.
Absolutely. Yeah, we still even consider that product, the Parature service is deprecated. We still support the product to help our client in case you want to move data out of this Parature.
Okay, so for the three of you that have Parature, call Daniel. Okay, so now what about the future? Because we've seen some interesting things. We've seen, what was it called, the Data Factory, which is the online version of SSIS, and also Dynamics moving towards the common data service and having integration capabilities to integrate between, albeit somewhat limited right now, but the vision being the integration between operations and operations and customer engagement working closer together. How do you see Kingswaysoft fitting in the world of the connected data service, the CDS?
Okay, great question. We strive to provide some most of the sophisticated feature in terms of the integration perspective. Going forward, we always look for opportunity to improve and or enhance our software capabilities. CDS is one of the area we're looking at. And we are still trying to wait for the SDK to be a little bit more stabilized before we actually commit to the feature. For SQL Server, for the Azure Data Factory, which is it's considered to be a big deal in many ways because it moves the SQL Server integration service to the cloud, so that you can easily run SAS packages or SAS jobs on the cloud, which is a significant benefit. We provide a significant benefit to the client who wants to move cloud, and we are in a certain way trying to work with Microsoft SQL Server integration service team to get our piece of the software to the cloud as soon as we can. And it's on our first priority at this moment.
And I wrote a tip of the day 1007 yesterday. By the time this episode publishes, it'll be last week. But because I got a little frustrated with seeing all the hype around the CDS, because you see all the things from Ignite and others talking about CDS as if it's the miracle, and nobody talks about what it is now. And so I wrote a post kind of clarifying how do you get to it, what is it today, and really all it is today is a database. It's a big database or multiple database instances, and it's got some pre-created tables for the common elements between operations and CRM or AX and CRM. And so it has some limited integration capabilities, like the common areas like customers, contacts, price lists, currencies, product catalogs. It's got some pre-built tables for that and some integration processes, the templates you can use. But what I see is today, anybody using that wants to go beyond that is still going to have to enhance that with an ETL tool. And as they bring a more mature SDK out, which what they showed at Ignite looked like, it's almost like it's becoming CRM or similar to the XRM model. And so I think that's exciting because then CDS can be just another database, just another connection that you can use.
That's I see CDS could be potentially a data hub for future business operation and enterprise integration. That kind of picture that kind of perspective should come in a little bit more solidify as time goes. Probably, hopefully, at the beginning of the next year, we can see a better picture about what a CDS offer would benefit to a large enterprise
Right,
client.
and that's where Kingswaysoft is more than just an integration migration tool. A lot of the things you built are very useful for other things like scheduled system jobs or cleanup jobs or the audit deletion you mentioned, or any number of different things that aren't strictly integration. Some of them are used to move and transform data into a structure that's more conducive for Power BI to read from. Those types of things. So that's where I think for the foreseeable future and even beyond that, as the common data service enhances, there still will be a need for a Kingswaysoft tool to be used to enhance and used for system maintenance and just the workhorse of managing your data. We all were at CRM-UG Summit since our last episode. Actually, our last episode was at CRM-UG Summit when we were jammed into a teeny tiny room with about 1 million people. That was fun. So, outside taking your Kingswaysoft hat off, what are some of the other things that have you excited that you're seeing from version 9 of Dynamics 365, or what you've heard from seen on the product roadmap, Daniel?
I think version 9 has done some really good job in terms of the UI refresh, and also there's the virtual entity support. Plus, there is also the multi-select pick list. I'm a big fan of using multi-select pick list because it used to be very tedious to implement, and it's always been in the territory, whether it's being a supported enhancement or it's kind of non-supported customization. So going forward, you have just out-of-box support for multi-select pick list.
But I got to ask you: does the ETL designer in you shudder to think of data stored in the format that multi-select pick lists are storing data?
That's an interesting question. Yes, it's in certain way multi-select is behind the scene. It's probably not the pretty one. Because of the multi-value situation. But we try to handle that transparent for our client. We use a delimited text to store the option values, and you transfer and also we support in our component. We support multi-select pick list in version 9.1. We have tried to make it easy for our client.
So, what do you think? Senior Architect Hobbit? Do you think you'll be rolling out multi-select option sets in production?
I have a project right now that we're debating it. Because honestly, we have other ways to do it. I'm not exactly sure right now. I can't tell you that I have a confidence level in rolling it out in production on my current project. So I'm wanting to see a little more before I take that leap. I will probably move with an alternative method and just have that in my back pocket for go live. See where we're at when we get closer.
Yeah, I think the biggest drawbacks that I've heard are you can't really work with it with business rules, and it has limitations with workflows. Yeah. So there you got to be really sure that it's not a significantly major field that you're using multi-select for.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, especially if you're in if you're in any kind of organization that's going to want to do a lot of reporting, it's and have triggers based on those attributes to generate that reporting. It's going to cause problems. So that's what's leading me to not want to implement it right off the bat. I like it though. I'm happy it's here.
Yeah, me too. It's good to have.
Absolutely.
it's another thing off our list of things we complained about for years. So
yeah. So I mean,
we got it. Well, but we'll find new things to complain about.
But it's great. It's great for if you want something on screen, easy to data entry, but you have set those expectations ahead of time, and so where there's no real issue with the implementation.
It looks really nice.
I agree. It does.
All right, so Daniel, thanks for giving us an update. If you want to hang around, since George isn't here, you can be the grumpy developer if you want. Sean, do you have any Dynamics news for us?
I
this
actually
week?
do. There's a few things. This is kind of a little bit around the web. Segment I've heard before. We talked about XRM Toolbox a little bit ago, and they just released. Tanguy just sent out on Twitter that they now support the V9 SDK, new plugin store included, which is good. Always good to see XRM Toolbox getting updated. It's like kind of like Christmas every day when you see a new tool or a new plugin in there. I wanted to talk a little bit about. We went back and forth internally on this, that change tracking solution. What are your thoughts on that? We saw that from a couple folks, and we were looking at it as well. But what are you thinking about that change tracking solution that's available on AppSource?
So, what does the change tracking solution on AppSource? Well, what is the value of it?
Well,
what does it do?
Well, that's kind of that's kind of partially what I was trying to understand myself, because really what it's doing is it gives you the details on changes on who updated an entity, JavaScript, assemblies, that kind of thing, right? So I guess it's more of a auditing on steroids, just to see what changes happen to a record, but I'm not 100% clear on why it's different than, and is it different than change tracking that you would indicate you want to allow change tracking on an entity?
There's two words why I wouldn't use it. Microsoft Labs. And I'll tell you why. Because Microsoft Labs, starting with the solution for Azure blob storage of attachments, they've been releasing things to AppSource, and people see it and they think, oh, Microsoft, but it's not Microsoft. It's not a supported part of the application. It's something put out more of as a proof of concept, and a lot of times I'd encourage you to look at the documentation. It looks like documentation that is written in another language and then translated to English. You see a lot of subject, verb, mistakes and commas in the wrong places, and that just tells me these are not necessarily things I would want to put in production. Now, I encourage people to try them. Now, we never did get the the attachment Azure thing to work. It would work with like note attachments, but not email attachments. And there's no support. There's no source code. Building mission critical processes around it are not what I'd recommend. I'd rather see using Kingswaysoft and the ability to leverage the standard change tracking capability and building your own kind of custom audit, is a better way. Look at where we're going with organization insights. That's getting more of that information. There's other ways to get this information that I would question. I love the gamification has the new thing called user access, which is you can do a game where you can look at who's using the system and who's logging into it. Now, it doesn't give you like who looked at a record or whatever,
they did,
but and there's some other ones. There's another audit solution which has like a 50-page document about how to manually publish plugins that I'm just leery of.
No, I agree, and I agree with the labs comment. That's generally proof of concepts in my head, not ready for prime time. Something you would look at in a dev environment.
Daniel, what would you say, Daniel, if you had somebody who wanted to do more user adoption reporting and like go about looking at who's actually changing records? What What would you recommend they do?
I have not touched the change tracking solution. I have no idea how deep this can provide you in terms of analytics purpose. But in coming to our solution, we do have the capability to help you to extract change logs, and including audit changes, and also we support entity changes. So in our CRM source component, so basically the idea, if you want to extract audit log from CRM in a structured way, we have that tool for you today. And you can fire up a CRM source component and then just configure what record or which entity you want to read from this for the audit, which basically is HTML you have to supply, and then we extract all the log for you, and including the history of the of each operation, including what is the old value and what's the new value. I believe many of our clients using that feature for their offline audit analytical purposes.
Yeah. And that's the change tracking feature is great, not the solution for Microsoft Lab, but the actual change tracking feature, because it's really revolutionized how you can find out what records have changed recently rather than reloading everything. So it's a good thing. The other test I would say is, if this solution just magically appeared in app stores with no fanfare, there's nothing on the CRM team blog, you don't see a lot of MVPs tweeting about it, people on the CRM team haven't tweeted about it, you got to think this isn't a high-profile thing for Microsoft. And there's plenty of other official features and solutions like field service, project service, document suggestions that I haven't gotten as deep into as I want to. I don't need to mess with some proof-of-concept solutions that appear in app stores.
Yeah, exactly. We got a couple other items. This one caught my attention because this was recently discussed in a couple forums. Sarah Critchley, our friend at CRM Cat on Twitter, friend of the pod and of CRMUG, newly minted All-Star. She has on the CRMUG forums. She has a forum post talking about questions for Microsoft about GDPR, and they're doing a presentation for the CRMUG UK event on the 14th of November. So I'm interested in tracking that discussion and see what kind of questions come out from their user community on what they're expecting or concerned about in terms of GDPR and how Microsoft is going to manage those requirements.
And for those of you who aren't in Europe or do business in Europe, GDPR is the regulation that takes effect in May 2018, coincidentally when Parature gets deprecated and gets shut down. But it's the right to be forgotten law. And so I think, Daniel, there's some opportunities for you in GDPR. For example, I'll give you a scenario that came up in a conversation last week or the week before, which is, according to the law, former employees, you have to totally wipe from your systems all information if they want you to. And so, one scenario we have right now that there's not a great answer for is, if you deactivate a user and remove their license in Office 365, they become a disabled user in CRM, and then you remove their AD record from Azure AD, they're basically an orphaned record you can't update. And so the question is, we need a tool that can go in and clear those fields out if they have to. And so that's where I think having the ability to do that, I don't know if that's technically possible, but I think that would be an interesting use of Kingswaysoft.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see the usage of that kind of scenario, and just given that perspective, we do offer the tool that can help you to deal with a large quantity of data update, interactive fashion or non-interactive fashion, whichever way you choose to. You can run the software within Visual Studio without having to have a license, and you can just do update, delete, and in case you wanted to deactivate that will also be part of the solution.
Okay. I hope George doesn't call for his right to be forgotten, because I would have to re-edit like.
Yeah, but the problem is he'll ask to be forgotten and then interrupt you 17 times on the way of being forgotten. So, but yeah, GDPR is something that, especially for those of us on the implementation side, doing things for financial services, especially for global clients, that's it's going to be a big thing to keep an eye on. So that was interesting to me. One more thing.
Well, I've talked to a couple of customers that are working through it, and some are more freaked out than others. Some are pretty okay with it, and are just updating their customer agreements to grant them permission to use all their data. And that's probably what will happen. But if you have data that's decades old,
and what will that do to your reporting and analytics for historicals? That'll be interesting to see. Last item I have on the news, security enhancement, user session and access management. So we were talking about this before the podcast. This is kind of cool, how you can now set a session timeout for individual users, or not users, instances, and then the users can have to remain signed in to the application for that set period, and it'll sign them out when the period expires. This is great, and it's also going to support HIPAA requirements for timeout periods. So you had an interesting comment when we were talking about this earlier regarding on-prem. Obviously, this is available for cloud, but what were you talking about for on-prem?
The blog post, and this is on the CRM team blog, blogs.mscn.microsoft.com/CRM. Where it says these enhancements will be available for Dynamics 365 online, Dynamics 365 on-premises, 16 online, 16 on-premises, and 2015 on-premises. And so that means there's an update coming for CRM 2015 and 2016 on-premises. And that's interesting. And I'm just wondering, so if you read the article, this is not something on the ADFS level. This is something actually in the settings of the application. You can go and set this, and it's interesting. So one of the things under access management is to prevent users from sharing credentials to access Dynamics 365. A token's generated to ensure that the user who was given access by the identity provider is the same user. How is that going to work for people who log into different machines? How is it assuming some second factor authentication? I don't really understand that.
Isn't this
yet.
working in conjunction with Office 365? So I think the management of it is within Office 365 and pertains to Dynamics 365 as opposed to directly in Dynamics. But I could get that. I could be mistaken on that. But I think it has something to do with Office 365, which would enable a lot more capability in terms of identification and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we had, we've always had this with things like ADFS, but it kind of applied to every instance. So the cool thing here is it's setting things like enforcing inactivity session timeouts by environment. When I guess you could set that with PowerShell, you could set that with ADFS, but a lot of online customers are using AD Connect now and aren't using ADFS anymore. So you could set an activity timeout, session timeout, and access management.
And I like that it's not across all, like you said, not across all orgs within the instance, but that does. I've had implementations where we've had insane levels of timeouts. So this is fantastic to hear this coming down the pipe.
And you want to frustrate your users? Set your timeout to 20 minutes.
That'll do it. That will do it. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that covers it from the news.
Okay, great. Daniel, do you have any, besides Kingswaysoft, of course, what are some of your other go-to tools that you use?
My primary tool day to day is Visual Studio. I'm a developer by my heart, and I go day in, go day out by using Visual Studio. That's my number one tool I use every day. I do use some. We use TFS as our source control system. We use that to track bugs and issues. And I use some like a utility tool, like a file comparison tool. One of the file tool I use is a file Beyond Compare.
Yeah,
it's very, very nice utility.
Yeah, we've used that before. How do you use that? Do you use that to compare data sets, or do you use it to configure like data models?
I mostly compare source code because sometimes when I make a change, I wanted to track. I use version control as well as that type of version file comparison, but sometimes the tool from the version control is not as good enough, so I use that fairly frequently.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So related to that, my tool recommendation, this isn't new, but kind of revisiting from the past, is Microsoft Teams. I logged into Teams, and it's been a while since I checked the connectors. That has just exploded. I mean, it's amazing how many things you can connect to Teams now. So you mentioned VSTS. There's a connector for VSTS where you can connect your team to, or connect a conversation or a chat. What do you call those? Basically a thread in Teams.
A channel.
Yeah, a channel. You've also got RSS feeds, Jira, Twitter, Trello, GitHub, Jenkins, Bitbucket, Asana, Airbrake, just a lot of just dozens and dozens of services. And so that to me is just increasing exponentially the usability of Teams for development teams, but also non-development teams. I mean, I'm looking at Asana now that Wunderlist is deprecated, and they're connected in there. So, and they are also with Flow and Power Apps as well. So the things I have, like my Flow that creates a task in Power Apps or in Wunderlist when one is created in CRM assigned to me, I can move that same stuff to Asana or a number of different productivity or task management tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Flow, Power Apps, and Teams with the explosion of all these connectors. It is continually like drinking from a fire hose to really get your arms around what is that, not only the capability, but what's really the best ones to use. How well can you use them? I mean, you could go down a rabbit hole for weeks just playing around trying to figure out these connectors and their viability and functions that you could use with them. So it's great to see, but man, it's tough to keep up.
And what do you think about the news? And this kind of slipped from Microsoft, somebody in a speech or something, and it's kind of been confirmed that Microsoft Teams is going to replace Skype for Business. I don't know if you saw that news or not, but yeah, basically the functionality of Skype for Business is going to be in Teams, which I don't know exactly how that would fit together, but that's going to be really interesting.
Look, the IM functionality is already in Teams. I can't stand it. So if that's the case, I hope they skin the messaging functionality from Skype for Business within that in a similar fashion, because the way they have it implemented now, it's kind of like that.
It's the threaded conversation more than an IM.
Yeah, I hate that.
And it's like if Yammer and Skype for Business had a baby.
Yeah, and then gave it away. Send it away off of the component. Yeah.
I mean, but if moving to Teams got rid of all the connection issues with Skype for Business, which probably 25% of the time people can't connect to at least one guy on your call, and you got to jump to join me or go to meeting.
Yeah.
That might not be a bad thing.
No, it wouldn't be a bad thing if that's the case. I agree. But we'll have to see. We will have to see.
How about you, Sean? You got any super cool tools you've been using?
No real super cool tools at the moment. it's really just the same staple that I frequently use from XRM Toolbox, Solution Manager, the metadata document generator, those kind of things. Been doing. There is actually something I'm going to be using here in the very short term is the security role comparison tool. That's going to be a big one for me in the next week or two.
Is that the David Yak XRM?
Yeah.
Tools?
Yep, that's going to be big for me in the next week or so.
What about the new version of Unified Scheduler for field service? Have you looked at that yet?
We've been looking at it. I have a project going on right now where we're going to implement it. A lot of cool functionality in there, especially with the schedule board and things you can do with the characteristics and such, being able to schedule against a lot of different objects and entities. And that's something we're actually going to talk about on the At Your Service podcast very soon. Maybe this week, maybe the next podcast, but we're going to be talking about that very soon, in depth.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll look forward to that. Maybe this week or maybe next week.
You got it.
All right.
Now that we talked about it, there's a better chance it's going to be this week. So,
anybody have anything they want to say about George since he's not here?
This has been fantastic. Let's just leave it at that.
All right, well, thanks, Daniel. Everybody go check out the fall release of Kingswaysoft. Thanks for joining us, Daniel.
Thank you. I appreciate having me.
This has been CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast, with Business Solutions MVPs George Dubinsky, Joel Lindstrom, and Sean Tabor. This podcast is a production of Dynamic Podcasts, LLC. Follow us on Twitter at CRM Audio. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, or any place else that fine podcasts are available. You can email us at voice@crm.audio with questions or topic suggestions.